Hey y'all, so I'm gonna do one more video tonight for you, and this is just kind of like some Windows tips and tricks for today, I guess. So there's a lot of extra things built into Windows or available for Windows that you may not know about, and I'm gonna try to show you some of those. So for instance, one of them is Hyper-V. It's built into Windows 10 Pro, I believe, at least. There are different versions, remember. There's Pro and Home, and there's the Windows N, which there are N versions of Windows, which I believe was primarily marketed in Asia, China maybe, that has some differences. But at any rate, they all have some of these extra features available for them, and you may be interested in some of them. So the way that I always find it is to open this up and type Hyper. So open up the start menu and type Hyper, because Hyper-V is in there. And I always forget that it's called Turn Windows Features On or Off, but you can search for Turn Windows Features On or Off if you want to. And then hit enter. There's probably another way to find that, but it's the way that I always find it. And basically you'll find a whole bunch of extra stuff in here. So you'll see that I keep using Hyper-V as an example. I don't have Hyper-V on this one, simply because I have VirtualBox on here, and I've had issues with the virtual Ethernet adapters conflicting between the two. So if I were to install Hyper-V, it would probably mess up VirtualBox, and then I have other things that I use along with VirtualBox. Usually I have Genymotion installed. I don't know if it's on this one or not, but at any rate, you could install Hyper-V if you wanted to try out virtual machines. Virtual machines, if you don't know, are when you can run one operating system on top of another, and that's what VirtualBox does as well. I'm thinking about doing a video specifically on virtual machines and Hyper-V and VirtualBox and Genymotion and whatever else. And maybe even like ESXi and some others, Zen and Kimu and whatever. But again, I'm focusing on that one because it's the one that I'm usually interested in, but there's so much more. So for instance, there are legacy components here like Direct Play you may find you need. Internet Information Services, I believe, well, and it gives you a little tooltip there. So it goes away after 5 seconds apparently. Provides support for web and FTP servers, along with support for ASP.NET websites, dynamic content, blah, blah, blah. So I believe you need IIS if you want to run a web server on Windows 10. But interestingly, you don't need Windows Server. You can do a simple one on Windows 10 by installing the Internet Information Services, IIS. And basically, you would just check it, click OK. Now, you'll notice this did not select the FTP server. If I wanted that, then I would select the FTP server. And you see it's got service, FTP publishing, and then this other one, extensibility for software extensions. So I could select them both, and then you get a check there, but you see this is only partially filled in. I'm not going to install that. I won't install anything today because this one's set up pretty well already. But there are other things here too, like for instance, Microsoft XPS Document Writer. Frankly, I never use XPS Document Writer. It was, I believe it's essentially just a competitor to PDF. And I always print to PDF. I never print to Microsoft XPS. So I could remove that if I wanted to save a bit of space. It doesn't make much of a difference, but for me in this computer. But you can remove things that are here that you don't need as well. It does say turn features on or off. There's SMB, which is a simple file sharing protocol. We would call it Samba in the Linux world, but it comes from Windows. And I think it means small to medium business, but I'm not positive on that. But it's basically simple file sharing. And actually, this Ubuntu folder right here, this is a Samba share that I have on my Ubuntu computer. So I have Samba, Windows SMB, sharing set up on my Linux computer, and that is the server that's serving my house. and beyond. So there's SMB, Telnet, TFTP, some older stuff, hypervisor platform and virtual machine platform. I'm not sure how those relate to Hyper-V, but I'm quite sure that they do. I think if you select Hyper-V, it may select, enables Virt software to run on the Windows hypervisor. Sometimes you'll select one and it will automatically select other options. Two really neat things here. One is WSL, Windows Subsystem for Linux, which, again, I may do a separate video on this, but if you check this and then do OK, which by the way, normally when you check one of these things and do OK, it will go to another screen where it says something about installing, updating now, and then usually it has to reboot a couple of times and do an update, and it acts just like it's doing a Windows update, because that's basically, that's kind of what it is. And so it'll reboot a few times. You'll see the monocolored screen where it says 0%, 5%, 30%, so on. And when it finally reboots, you'll have the item that you wanted to install installed. So Windows Subsystem for Linux is a way that you can actually run the Linux kernel, and to my knowledge, it's now a complete Linux kernel with WSL 2, which was just released with 2004 with this newest Microsoft Windows. This enables you to run the Linux kernel on Windows. So that's mostly for developers and stuff. So if I were a developer and wanted to develop software for Ubuntu, let's say, I can use WSL to develop that software right within Windows while I'm running Windows with with Windows Subsystem for Linux. That's getting more advanced now too, to where with WSL 2, not at the moment, but in the near future, we should be able to run full Linux apps that actually have a graphical interface, that actually have a graphical component, not just command line stuff, within Windows, which is just awesome. So if you've got a program that you like to use that maybe is only available for Linux, or maybe it's more performative or more secure on Linux, soon in the near future you'll be able to run graphical applications made for Linux, running on Linux, on a regular Linux kernel within Windows. So that's awesome. But it's a whole other thing I can get into at another time. What's the other one? Windows Sandbox. This is another really cool one. I love this. So it says enables the dependencies required to run Windows Sandbox scenarios. What this does, this is essentially it creates a virtualized copy of Windows in its own separate window. I think it uses Hyper-V plus some additional things. And then, like, let's say that you've got some software that you want to try out, but you don't know if it's loaded with viruses. You can, if you have Windows Sandbox installed, you can open up Windows Sandbox. It'll take a couple of seconds or a minute or two to fully load or really boot this virtualized copy of Windows 10, and then you can run that software inside of that. And what's nice is, if that software has a virus, since it's in this sandbox, or if you were talking FreeBSD, you would call it a jail. It's a virtual machine. So if you're running this software inside the virtual machine, if it's got a virus, if there's a problem with it, it won't be able to get out of that sandbox. So you can close it, and then your regular machine doesn't get that virus. You've tested the software. Now if the software works fine, cool, great, close it, and then you can install it on your main machine anyways. There's a whole bunch of other stuff in here, tons of different features. Frankly, that mostly I don't know a damn thing about because it's just beyond me. But there's a lot of free stuff in here that you can install. Services and tools to create and manage Windows Server containers, which I believe is Windows version, the Windows version of something like Docker, or perhaps Kubernetes. not too up on that. But there's a ton of extra stuff included in Windows, free of charge, included with what you've got, and you just simply need to turn them on. So you may want to have a look at this list sometime and see if, instead of going out searching for software somewhere else, see if it's already included in Windows. Because again, like for instance, VirtualBox, I don't need to have that to run virtual machines. I can run Hyper-V. I like to have VirtualBox. It's convenient for me for a couple of reasons, and I like the setup of it and such. But I don't need it. I can run those virtual machines right within Hyper-V, which is included with Windows 10 in this Pro version, anyways. So that's about it. It's one of those things where, again, I think a lot of folks just don't know that this extra stuff exists. Or perhaps you know something about it, but not how to get it, not where to find it. There you go. Just start menu. And again, I would type in Hyper, but you can type in turn Windows features on or off, I'm sure. Let's see. Yeah, Windows features, and there you go. Sorry, cat's going crazy again. And there are some additional things you can add into Windows 10. And hopefully be a little more productive. Yeah, that's all. All right. Hope that helps. Enjoy.